I think there's a really big problem with Call of Duty right now, and this problem has been an issue since the game was released, or in my opinion, actually, when they released Rank Play. I actually love this game, brother. I love Black Ops 6.
Yeah, NADESHOT, he's been an OG in the scene for a very long time. Like, he's the guy that me and my generation used to watch, like, back when Call of Duty was first taking off. So he was quite a pioneer in the industry. I'm sure, obviously, everybody knows who he is, even if you're, like, later to the scene. But, yeah, this guy has just been around for a very, very long time, and is very, very prominent in Call of Duty for a while now.
The core mechanics are addictive. I think they're rewarding. I think the gunfights are fun when you feel like you've had a fair gunfight. But ever since Rank Play was released, I think Call of Duty, all the shortcuts that they have taken from a server performance, a server protection, I think Call of Duty has just continued to take shortcuts over.
Yeah, I mean, so it sounds like he's acknowledging that the game at its core is a good fundamental game, but there's just all of these other issues that are plaguing the game, like performance issues. He's specifically talking about like the servers. Could be stuff with like bad netcode. And then I know in a lot of my community's case, it's, you know, people also complaining about skill-based damage, skill-based matchmaking, et cetera, et cetera. So it's like there is a good core game in there, but it's just being plagued by all this stuff that's just like tearing down the game, so to speak.
Over and over and over again when it comes to investing in the health and quality of the game. You know, this has been a really big complaint from my perspective, from my end, for many, many years now. You know, if you take a Call of Duty player and you send them over to a game like Valorant, where the game itself from the ground up was built around making sure that you have a fair and competitive gaming experience when you tap into a game of ranked, but not only, you know, like the health and quality of the game, but also the way that it feels when you're playing on those servers.
And then one thing I will say is I believe Call of Duty has traditionally catered, it feels like, more to the casual audience, whereas games like CS and, you know, League and Valorant, et cetera, more so cater to the competitive scene. And I've always been thinking and saying this for a long time, even since like 2007, that I think in order to keep a game alive, you have to cater, unfortunately. No, not unfortunately, but you have to cater to the competitive scene. Like, I don't mean that as you have to be super dismissive to the casual scene, because I know there's a lot of casual players out there. But for the game to be, like, to have longevity, it just needs to have that focus on the competitive scene, because ultimately, most of the casual players are going to come and go. And then once they get bored of the game, you know, they're out. They don't really impact the scene anymore, but the competitive players are the ones who usually love the game and are going to stick around regardless of if the game is hype or not. So in my opinion, it's usually better in the long run to cater to the competitive players, but in the short term, yeah, it's probably better to cater to the casuals. But I mean, NADESHOT usually comes in from more of a competitive perspective, so it might be kind of frustrating when you're dealing with a game that feels like it's constantly catering more so to casuals than it is to like a competitive player like himself. Whereas, yeah, League and CS and all these other games, Valorant, it just feels way better as a competitive player. It feels like you're able to progress in the game, and like it actually feels more meaningful.
I think if you boil it down to a number, Valorant servers are comparable to like 128 tick rate. Tick rate is, you know, from the Village Idiot over here's understanding of it, how often the server is like pinging back and forth to each player. And like,
yeah, so the tick rate is just how often the frequency of updates that it's sending out to the clients. So a higher tick rate usually will result in like smoother gameplay, more precise gameplay, but it can come at the expense of like performance. Like if your server is not capable of sending out that many updates, or if the client is not capable of receiving that many updates, there can be some problems there in terms of performance. So that's why certain games like, I believe like World of Warcraft, for example, it's not as like fast twitch will have a lower tick rate, but games like Call of Duty generally want to have a higher tick rate. So games like Valorant, CS, et cetera, because you would value the precision of the game and the game state over probably the performance of certain players that just don't have the specs to run the game, you know? So it's usually better in these types of games to have a higher tick rate.
Like the way that your bullets connect and the way that the game reacts to your input on the keyboard and mouse versus other players is how quickly you're getting a response back from the server. For anyone that doesn't know, Call of Duty for years. I mean, really since like I think the dawn of Call of Duty, they are on 10 to 16 to 20 something tick rate servers. Listen, I'm not.
Yeah, it's an interesting choice because once again, Call of Duty falls into the type of game that would probably want a higher tick rate. But yeah, I mean, I would imagine maybe they're doing this to save on costs or to try and give like an overall more like an overall bigger group of people a better experience, so to speak. You know, like if some people don't have the hardware to handle like the faster tick rates and everything, that could be like that's like the only reason I could see of why they would be doing that. Especially when you have games like, you know, once again, CS and Valorant that are upping the tick rate with no problem whatsoever.
Not trying to speak objective facts, I would say, just because I don't have a network background. Warzone is 10 tick rate for pubs, 20 for ranked, and multiplayer is dynamic up to 24.
So Warzone is an interesting one though, I will say. So like there should be a distinction between like open world battle royale type games and then the more smaller map like fast-paced games, because a game like Warzone might actually have to have a lower tick rate because the amount of state updates that are going out is going to be a lot more than like a more smaller contained like 6v6 small map, if that makes sense. Because if you have a huge open world with way more players in it, it's just more state updates. So in that case, you might actually have to have a lower tick rate potentially in those kind of games, or there's a balance there to be had, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I hear that compared to what I've experienced on Valorant and what they provide over on Counter-Strike, they're not even in the same ballpark, dude. They're not even in the same.
But I think it's valuable to compare Black Ops 6, like the arcade shooter multiplayer that everyone knows and loves, and compare that to Counter-Strike because it's more of like the smaller maps with the smaller scale teams and less state updates, or less state 2 update. There's quite a lot of state updates because it's very frequent with all the inputs that the players are doing, but it's like less stuff to consider since it's a smaller scale kind of thing.
Category of class when it comes to the publisher and what the studios that have created the game are actually providing for the community. Just think that is a massive problem that has gone overlooked for so long when it comes to Call of Duty. I think that they have always prided or taken a lot of pride in. They've had a massive player base, just hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people playing this game over the course of the last 2 decades. And for a long time, I think this game has always been like, oh, I'm coming home from work and I'm going to play with the boys for a couple hours and I'm going to kick back a few brewskis. And from my perspective, I think Call of Duty has taken pride in that type of audience, that type of casual player base. And so they've never really felt the need to invest in servers that.
Yeah, I mean, it's very true. Like Call of Duty, for the most part, has been more of a casual game with like a niche competitive scene, where definitely there's a lot of players who want to be competitive and want the game to be competitive, but like at a mass scale, it's probably just more so catered to casuals. And realistically, they're not going to really notice that much of a difference, or they're not going to care if the server tick rate is, you know, X or Y, right? They don't really give a crap as long as the game is, you know, running semi-smoothly. But whereas a competitive player who's very hyper focused on precise aiming and landing shots and all the movement and everything, they're going to definitely care about the higher tick rate. But at the end of the day, Call of Duty or Activision is probably going to cater to the thing that makes them the most money, which in this case is the casual scene, at least for now. I mean, there's always potential that a competitive scene could be the thing that makes them money if they actually put like a focus on it, but that is just not the case for now, I guess.
Perform better and faster and more efficiently, because I think they believe that the players that are truly making up the network of players that they have, using their game and playing their game every day, they won't notice the difference, and they don't actually care. And so if they don't actually care and this is a casual game, then why are we going to spend more money on server performance when we're not going to see any benefit to it? And I don't mean us as players. I mean, ourselves as if, we're talking from Activision's perspective. That is one of the biggest reasons why we continue to be served just a handful of shit every single year when we play this game. Honestly, if I'm sitting back from Activision's perspective, one of the worst decisions they could have made, even though we had been asking and begging for it for years, was to introduce ranked play into the ecosystem of Call of Duty.
That's crazy to me how long it's taken. I mean, for like a ranked play to get implemented properly in Call of Duty, I feel like that's something that could have been done such a long time ago. But I feel like I thought Black Ops 2 had some sort of like competitive play though, like a ranked game, or maybe it was just a ranked lobby that you could join for more competitive games, but maybe it didn't actually persist a rank or anything. I can't really remember.
As the video game industry has grown, I think the focus of Twitch, at least beyond like, you know, Grand Theft Auto and a few other outliers, people love to play games that are competitive, that have a...
Yeah, I think playing a competitive game is always going to be more valuable, at least in my opinion, because it feels like you're actually doing something and achieving something. Yes, of course, there's fun to be had in the more casual games, like if you just want to chill and relax. And there's a huge audience, obviously, that loves casual games. But there's also a huge audience that wants to actually progress in something and feel like they're accomplishing something. You know, equivalent to like if you were playing sports or whatever it may be, right? There's that sense of, oh, I'm actually progressing in something. I'm good at something. I have a skill in something. And maybe potentially if there's a competitive scene around it, I have the potential to make money in that sort of thing and make it my career. So it's just very important, in my opinion. I've always taught this since I was like 14 years old, is to cater to the competitive scene. So I just hope that Call of Duty does start focusing more on the competitive aspect of the game and kind of making that the primary focus of their game development, you know? And that would, in my opinion, mean stop re-releasing the same game every single year or 2 years. Just focus on one game, get a few maps in there with a few like good quality guns that counter each other properly, and then just focus on that and let people develop their skill in the game for a few years. And then host tournaments and make it a thing that's familiar, make it spectator friendly, et cetera, et cetera. But with the game constantly changing, it's like, how can anyone keep up with the competitive aspect of the game if it's changing every year? Not to mention, it's like you can't even play the game at a higher level because of the whatever poor servers and potentially skill-based damage, cheaters, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Ranked system that is rewarding and rewards you for getting better at the game. And for me, you know, as a young kid, ranked play in any game is the only reason what gets me hooked. It's the only thing that makes me want to play it more. I love to be competitive against other players. I love to have a rank next to my name in the game to show how much better I've gotten at the game. And that to me is the reward system.
Yeah, because it's not just a game. You're competing against other people. That's like the key factor there, because that's where the sense of like purpose and reward comes from. Like in a casual game, you're most likely just playing the game. But in a competitive game, you're playing against a person, so to speak. So there's that layer of pride that comes with it, that you are better than another person at this game, so to speak.
That's what, you know, stimulates my brain to say, ooh, I'm going to play this again tomorrow. The problem is Call of Duty finally gave us rank play, but they didn't go all in. It was almost as if they finally bent the knee to all of these requests and the desire from like a small portion of the community. And I think eventually, even if they didn't add rank play for multiplayer, because I think the competitive makeup of the overall community that plays the game is still pretty small in comparison to the casual players. I think that they were feeling pressure from other games like Fortnite adding in a ranked mode and all these other titles bolstering a ranked play system that was keeping players engaged and wanting to come back and play the game.
Yeah, and then with ranked, it's not like it's some easy thing that you can just slap on. You know, it's a massive feature and undertaking to get something like that implemented, because I mean, you need to, like, everything from designing what the ranks look like, what are the ranks, how many points do you gain per win or loss, how do you calculate that, like how do you have the leaderboards and display the leaderboards with that information, etc. There's just so much that goes behind that sort of thing that it probably is not in their best interest. If they are once again catering to a more casual scene, they would want to focus on all of the casual stuff as opposed to dedicating time and resources to this entirely different massive feature. But yeah, they've probably been pressured due to, you know, the community outcry combined with all these other games that are doing it, so where they finally had their arm twisted, so to speak, to like actually get something implemented. So it's unfortunate that it wasn't up to snuff with, I guess, what NADESHOT was expecting and what others might have been expecting.
The game the next day. So I think rank play would have been introduced eventually, but I certainly think the vocal minority pressured Activision to introduce rank play some years ago, but they never really went all in. Rank play has been broken time after time after time. The biggest disappointment from my perspective is that Treyarch actually did an incredible job of creating a game that is fun to play. The core mechanics of Black Ops 6, like I said at the beginning of this conversation, are unbelievable. I think it's one of my favorite games that I've had in my hands in a very long time. The House of Lies, I would call it.
I mean, yeah, it'd be cool if they could do some sort of community thing where if they would let like some sort of community take like, I don't know, like a license of the game and then just run with it and then run the tournaments how they should be run, and then just organize all of that as a community grassroots kind of thing, because usually the community knows what's best for the community. That's kind of what Super Smash Bros. Melee did for their competitive scene. So it would be kind of cool if they would like at least get the game, maybe have dedicated servers or something for the competitive scene where they are more optimized, and there's more casual servers which are not as optimized, et cetera, and then like allow community leaders to kind of run and organize these tournaments, set up prize pools. Maybe Call of Duty or Activision could, back the prize pools with some money, something like that. I think would be really, really cool, and then let the community kind of develop on its own. It would be like one of those I scratch your back, you scratch my back sort of things, where it's good for the community and it would be ultimately good for Activision as well.
It's like houses being built. I was trying to think of an analogy before I started the stream that would make sense the way that I see Call of Duty. Newer homes, they look great, it seems great, but they use shortcuts, cheap materials. You move into this fucking thing and it's broken. The construction is just shitty, shoddy, cheap materials. The people that are building it, they don't give a fuck. They're just trying to get it done. You got nails exposed in the drywall. All the plumbing is fucked. There's nothing in this home that actually works properly.
I mean, yeah, this is a problem in general with software development, just in any field of software development. There's often a lot of deadlines and pressure to get things done, which are more valued than the actual quality of the software itself. So you'll have products that get shipped out that are like, that have a lot of bugs in them or need a lot of improvement. There's also the agile nature of software development, which is kind of it's very, very popular in the community of software development of, you want to be agile, very quick to release, etc. Because like there's not as much of a negative impact as if you release broken code, because you're able to just re-release and patch quickly, whereas back in the day you weren't able to do that as easily. So there was a lot more emphasis on like, hey, when we ship this, it better be good, because this is going to be the only time we ship this, or it's going to be very difficult to update. It's going to take a while. It takes some time and a lot of effort. So I think just in general, it's a problem with software. And then not to mention, like, as time goes on, software becomes more and more, like the tools that developers use, including myself, like become more and more abstract, which like adds a layer of curtains between the developer and what's actually happening under the hood. So it's good because it allows for the increased development of cool products. But if something goes wrong, if there's performance issues, yeah, you can get into a scenario where developers might not be as like in line or in tune with what's going on compared to maybe more old school developers that like, they had to know the fundamentals of everything to get anything implemented, because there weren't all of these nice frameworks and abstractions of code that you could use. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of moving parts here to why like Call of Duty could be in that sort of state. And not to mention, once again, there's the whole financial aspect of, even if you have competent developers, everything's looking good, the software is good, I mean, they might just be skimping out on like the server costs and trying to give you the bare minimum, so to speak, to save as much money as possible. So it's a multifaceted kind of thing.
It looks good, but once you get in there and you live there for 6 months, the damn thing is falling apart. That's what Call of Duty feels like to me, from a network perspective.
And then the other thing is like Call of Duty, the whole look and aesthetic, right, that might draw you in, kind of what he's saying with these nice houses. It's like they're almost even ruining that as well. It's like the house doesn't even look good. Like, I don't even want to live there anymore. Like these stupid skins that they're putting in the game, the loss of identity. It's like, not only does it not look good, but it doesn't even perform good. So they're kind of giving themselves a double whammy here, I guess.
From an anti-cheat perspective, the game itself, Treyarch did their job. The game is fun. The mechanics are fun. But once you start playing the game, if you actually spend time, like meaningful time playing this game, it does not work properly. Whoever is running the game from a server and network perspective, I don't know if that direct order comes from Activision. I don't know who is making the decisions for the servers that we play on. But if I get into a ranked game of multiplayer,
well, it's the platform engineers and the DevOps guys. So normally you'll have like in software, you're going to have like your application developers, which could work anywhere on the front end, the back end, database. You could have a full stack guy that does everything. And then you'll have usually like some DevOps platform engineers, which are responsible for managing the cloud infrastructure. And those are the guys that are setting up that stuff and managing it all. And I'm sure there's some higher up person that's like, so they're also basically considered like developers as well, right? They're on the more technical side, and then even they will have like a product owner who's going to give them the green light or not of whether they can, scale up these resources. Like the lead developer of the platform engineers might say like, hey, we might want to, scale these up a little bit. But ultimately, if a product side person gets back to them and says, nah, we're not doing that, then like he can't do anything. His hands are tied. So you'd probably want to direct your attention towards like the platform engineers, the cloud platform engineers, and then whoever is like the product owner of that, of those, like on their teams.
There's three things that are,
and then, whereas like the application developers, for example, would be more focused on like the netcode stuff and then implementing potentially skill-based damage, right? That would be more of an application developer that's doing that, as opposed to like a platform guy.
Gonna happen. One of the three things are guaranteed to happen. You're either gonna be playing somebody who is blatantly hacking and aim locking or closet walling. Some of these guys are really good at hiding how they cheat. So that's strike one for me. There's no authentic experience. The game itself, there is no authenticity behind.
It's just so unfortunate too. I mean, it's an unfortunate reality that time and resources even have to be spent on anti-cheat stuff. Like if people just didn't cheat, you wouldn't have to waste all your time trying to develop these technologies to catch cheaters, and you wouldn't even have to worry about even implementing your game in a way to like worry about cheaters. But the sad reality is you do. It's just so disgusting, like why people want to cheat in a game. I just will never understand this. I said this in my last video. The only reason I could understand is for like some sort of financial gain. But other than that, like if you're doing it for clout, it's just like, dude, what clout do you have? You literally didn't earn anything. It's like SpongeBob with his inflatable muscle arms. Like it's literally nothing. What's the point of flexing if you don't actually have anything to back it up? But that's a whole side thing, I guess.
My experience with the game. The second thing that's going to happen is if they are cheating and they're about to lose the game, then they lag out the server, bro. They DDoS the server. They send a egregious amount of like packets on Activision's network, and then it lags out the entire game. Everybody gets sent back to the lobby. Nobody gets SR. So I just wasted 10 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, that would be, you'd have to have probably something on the application side. If like, they would have to think about this, like, okay, what happens if we're in a game that has progressed along up to a certain point, and then what do we do if the server just disconnects? Like, there would have to be some sort of application logic there that's able to like handle that. So if like the on dispose, so to speak, on dispose of the game room, like, hey, maybe you just award the players who are ahead, they get the points. Like that's maybe the system that they would have to implement. So like if somebody does try to do this stupid bullcrap cheating thing, it would just give whoever's ahead the points. But even then you'd have to think about, okay, well, what if you have a group of guys that's going to like, they know they're going to lose the game, but let's say they get ahead for like 2 minutes and then they do this whole like DDoS thing where they try to bring down the server or try to like lag the game out. Like you wouldn't want to award them with the points. So it's just like this constant thing that you have to be like thinking of all the different scenarios, and it's not always an easy fix, unfortunately. Because you might think like, oh, we can just do it in this way, but then a cheater will try to figure out another way how to circumvent the thing that you just implemented to prevent them from cheating. So it's kind of like this game of cat and mouse, unfortunately.
And it's my time. That's strike number 2. And then strike number 3 is I play a game that, all things considered, the players on the other team seem normal, and I feel like I'm about to have a normal Skyline hardpoint. But then
and then skill-based damage comes in, and the guy with the more skins does more damage. I'm just kidding. Let's see what he says.
I look up left at my telemetry or whatever the hell you call it. It says I'm on 20 ping, but I've got like a half a second delay on my bullets being shot from my gun. And I feel like I'm just getting absolutely pissed on, even though this number is telling me that I have a low ping, a low digit ping, but it feels fucking terrible. It feels like I'm playing COD 4. Bro, I have a visceral, like, I can't even begin to explain to you how real this memory is. Back when I was a pro player in COD 4, all the tournaments were online. Every single tournament we played was online. And they had these things called pro circuit ladders. It was basically like game battles. You sign up, you get your boys, you pay $120, and you could play on this like paywall pro circuit ladder that would qualify you for the national championship later that year if you placed high enough. And there was a team called ATZ, and all 4 players were from California. And so if you played them and they were the higher seed on the ladder, they had a better record, they were like a top 10 team, that means that they would host 2 out of the 3 games that you played.
Yeah, so in Call of Duty 4, the model was a lot different. It was not a server authoritative model. So like now when you're connecting into a game, right, you're connecting into like some dedicated server that's at some location, hopefully relatively close to you and all the players, right? So everyone has like equal ping. But back then it was like the host is the server. It's like the peer-to-peer kind of model where they are acting as the host and the client connecting into their own host, which is on their network, whereas you're having to connect in from like far away potentially, like if you're in East Coast having to play these California guys. So they're going to inherently just have way better response time than you are, and they're going to have the advantage. So it was kind of a problem of back in the day on COD 4 GBs. I also remember this of like host basically gets like a free, not free win, but they have host priority, so to speak, which is quite annoying.
Versus them. And all four of them on a West Coast, California host, it was almost impossible to beat them. It was almost impossible to beat them.
Yeah, and then the reason, one of the benefits of having this kind of system in place is actually, it can be more performant if the host is like close to all of the people in the lobby, right? So for example, if it was just those West Coast guys playing on that local host that's being spun up that they're all connecting into, it would probably actually be better, like if they're all in the same suburb or something, than connecting out to some server that's, I don't know, like miles away or wherever it may be. So there is a benefit to it, but it's more subject to cheaters, just due to the nature of like how that model is set up. And then obviously there's this problem of if the host is like really far away from, the other players, it's not very fair if everybody is, if the host and all the people close to the host have a better connection, and then you guys are getting like shafted because you're far away.
Because the network delay between you pinging to their host across the country, it was almost impossible to overcome that. And I'm not even kidding, and I do not say this lightly, and I'm not trying to be dramatic. Bro, I'll be on a server here in Texas pinging to Atlanta where I got 17 to 20 millisecond ping. I feel like that I'm still in 2008 playing on that West Coast server. There is no consistency with the network that you play on, these servers that you play on. And I think that has a lot to do with the low tick rate that we play on and have continued to play on in Call of Duty. I don't have a network background. I do not have a net.
I mean, yeah, like, just trying to there's like multiple factors, but generally speaking, like, if they could somehow do it to where they have a lot of geographic locations or servers that you could connect into, and if they could like do a little zone around that where it's like, hey, if you're not in this geographic zone, you're not allowed to connect into our server, sorry. And then they could do stuff like, having ping limits to where if your ping is above a certain amount, you can't join in. There's like different things you can do in that sense to like limit the players that are able to join into the lobby to kind of keep it fair. I mean, it does suck for players obviously who are higher ping that are not able to then connect into servers as easily or frequently, and then they can't really play the game. But some people will just default to the whole ping is king and let it kind of rest at that. And I would agree. I think ping is king and it should be prioritized over everything else.
Network engineer degree. But I'm telling you that after playing Valorant and playing other games that actually invest in the health of their servers, we are playing.
And then like once again, there's the whole ping aspect of it of you like talking to the server very quickly. Like you have a fast like 20 millisecond ping, but then there's the tick rate of like, well, okay, yeah, just because you have this fast connection established, there's like, okay, how many state updates are we sending out with the higher or lower tick rates, et cetera, et cetera. And then servers can get bogged down if they're not scaled up, horizontally or vertically. Once again, vertically means like a specific server has more or less CPU, memory, GPU, etc. So you'd want to scale that up vertically. And you also have horizontal scaling of the servers, where it's like you have multiple instances of these servers, and then the more you have, like the more horizontal scaling you have. So it could just be that they have like low horizontally and vertically scaled servers to where it's like getting bogged down by too many people connecting in. So there's a lot of different layers as well to this.
A game that is built for 2024, but performs like a game from 2008. And I would imagine that is motivated and is implemented in Call of Duty. Their server health exists in that way because they don't want to spend more money on more capable servers.
Yeah, it could. I mean, I think it's two things. That is one. That's probably the more likely scenario, just to save money. Two, could also be a layer of, just because it's newer does not mean it's better. Like the people who implemented the games back in the day, there's not a high chance, but it's possible, likely, that they might have had more domain knowledge of the developers that are on the teams now. And they might have just had more passion to get things done the right way. to where it could just be a matter of like, yeah, they're down to spend more money on these servers, but it's just like the implementation is just not good, right? That's always a possibility as well, right? Because it's like, once again, just because something's newer or it has like better this, that, and the other does not necessarily mean it's a more well-written application, because at the end of the day, it comes down to the developers that are writing it. Not to knock on them or anything. I'm just saying that's another possibility as well.
The problem is Call of Duty has...
And I would lump myself into that same category, by the way. Like, just because I'm developing something now in 2024 doesn't mean I'm smarter than somebody that was in 2007, right? I would argue that the guy in 2007 is probably smarter than I am, just due to the amount of experience that he inherently would have had, and then the different challenges he would have had at that time to develop something. So I humbly yield to other developers.
These great homes, they look beautiful. You think you want to pull the trigger, buy your first home, move in. It was built last year. It's got all the bells and whistles. The photos look great. You walk through it, your first pass. You're like, oh, this is pretty nice. But then you buy the damn home, you move in, you live there for 3 months, everything is broken. All the materials are cheap. Nothing works the way it's supposed to. You've got a handyman coming out every single month trying to fix something for you. I literally have to pay an aerospace engineer. I'm not even kidding. This guy used to work as an aerospace engineer, and he quit his fucking job to do 15 appointments a day from people in the Call of Duty community spending money to have him come in and optimize their PC. Update.
Yeah, once again, guys, like, you could have the best PC in the world with the highest specs possible, but it's not going to fix bad servers. Like, if the servers are not doing their job correctly, or just like if the server connection sucks, or for whatever it is, or if the application code sucks, it's not going to really matter how good your system is. Like, your system is only responsible for receiving the updates and then rendering whatever it needs to render on the screen. So for graphics, it will help obviously tremendously, because that's the thing that your machine is doing, is it's rendering graphics. And sure, there might be more. It might be faster at processing the inputs that are being received, but at the end of the day, you're a slave to the server, so to speak.
Their motherboards, tweak their GPUs and their CPUs, and literally push these PCs as far as they can, just so that they can get the amount of frames that you should be getting to play Call of Duty. I mean, they're doing fucking open heart surgery on my PC just to get 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 frames, because the game is optimized like shit as well. One of the most contentious points over the last 2 years I've seen in Warzone is having this guy Artist War.
And there's also a layer of like the client side code and how it's written, like not just the server. So if the code even on the client side is not written properly, then there can be some poor optimizations to where even if you have the best scaled up computer possible, yeah, that can help and it'll make it better, but it still might just be like poorly optimized code that's you can't do anything about. It's like the code is just poorly optimized, right?
Or literally downloading 3 different programs on your PC and going into your config files just so that you can hear what's actually happening in the game. And you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. If you don't optimize your audio, you're going to get fucking slammed. And if you do optimize your audio, then everybody tells you, oh my God, you're fucking cheating, bro. This is an unfair gaming experience. I mean, there is so much that you have to do in order to feel like you're playing a fair game of Call of Duty.
Yeah, and I would not qualify that as cheating. I would just say it's the unfortunate reality of making changes so that the game is at a baseline where it's playable in the way that it should be. As opposed to like something like aimbotting, where that is cheating, obviously, because that is not how the game is intended to be played. So yeah, I mean, I understand how there might be arguments saying that like what he's doing is cheating because it's not accessible to the community. And yeah, it would technically be unfair if somebody else doesn't know how to do that or doesn't have the time to do that, etc. But I wouldn't qualify that as cheating. I would just consider it, like trying to optimize and configure your system to get the game playing how it should be.
And those are just the things that you can control. No matter how set up you are with a PC, no matter how tweaked you have your audio to make sure that you can play a real game, as soon as you get into the server, we got to go back to those 3 strikes we just talked about. We got to go back and talk about the fact that there's somebody cheating in this lobby. If somebody is cheating in the lobby and they feel like they're going to lose, they just lag out the server so nobody wins. And then if you get past all that, there's no cheater in the lobby, the server hadn't been lagged out, you get to step 3, the final fucking frontier. You're on 15 ping, but the game still feels like shit. You got joked in every gunfight. You watch the kill cam. This guy looks like he's chewing on the drywall that these construction workers just installed in my home last week, literally gnawing on it. They're in slow motion, and it looks like I wasn't even shooting back at the guy. The game has so many foundational issues that no matter how good Treyarch or Sledgehammer or Infinity Ward or Raven, no matter what they do, they're always going to lose. They're always going to lose too.
Yeah, as the game gets more complex, it will inherently, applications that become more complex will be more hard to manage. Like the more hands that touch the application is not always better. You can run into a problem of like too many cooks in the kitchen, we say. It's like when you have too many developers working on something. Yeah, it's good to have a lot of eyes to check and see like, hey, can we improve this? But it's sometimes also unnecessary and leads to like no proactive decisions being made one way or another, and then things just are all over the place to where it would have been better if you maybe just had like a handful of people working on something, get it out the door, they're passionate about it, they know very clearly all of the code inside and out to where they can make changes to it, and then sure, have somebody come in after the fact to come in and see, okay, can we optimize this in a certain way? But I would imagine a game like Call of Duty, right, it's very, very massive scale. You have people coming in and out, multiple teams working on it, et cetera, to where it can become very unmanageable very, very quickly. And in software engineering, even me as a solo developer, if I'm working on like my side project, let's say, I have to live with the decisions that I make early on, to where if I make a bad decision early, I have to then choose, do I want to spend like hours, potentially days, fixing something that I messed up on early because I made a bad decision, or do I just leave it in the game? And you can imagine that sort of process is exacerbated the more hands and the more people are touching code and people are jumping in and looking at other people's code, and they don't really know what the functions are doing, et cetera, because it's just very overall complex.
Because Call of Duty does not invest in server health, server protection, and server performance. The game is not meant to be played by this many people. It's not meant to be played competitively. And I damn near feel like it's not even meant to play casually. I love this game. I love Call of Duty. I spent so many years away with it, and then starting to stream again, starting to grind again on MW3. The game felt, for the most part, very fun. But we dealt with waves and waves and waves of cheaters. We go through the normal Call of Duty cycle. I go on a Valorant arc, play that for 4 or 5 months, waiting for Black Ops 6. We play the beta, have a lot of fun with it. We wait a couple more months. The game finally comes out. The game is great. Had a great time with the Dark Matter grind. Had a great time with trying to reach Master Prestige. Wait about a month and a half. Rank play comes out. All smiles. Can't wait to play it. And now just the last 3 weeks have been quite literally the most miserable gaming experience I've ever had. Every single lobby, somebody's cheating. Team Ricochet comes out with a tweet 2 weeks later after rank play launches, after literally going through hell. Say, oh, we banned 19,000 accounts. We raised the threshold of our AI systems and our data storage to better improve the efficacy of those AI systems. I'm like, what the fuck did you just say to us? What are we talking about?
Yeah, it's like one of those things that it's a difficult like cat and mouse kind of game, because even if they fix stuff or catch cheaters in a certain way, if the cheaters find a new way to bypass the old way, then now the developers have to actively figure out, okay, well, how do we address this new workaround that the cheaters have found in our system, this new vulnerability that they found in our system. So it's very, very difficult, and it's not like sometimes you wouldn't even know like how they are cheating, right? You'd have to. That's the other thing, is like you might know that this is kind of the result, like they're aimbotting or they're doing whatever it is that they may be doing in the game, but you might not have any idea how to reproduce that. It can be very difficult to reproduce like these kind of behaviors that you're trying to prevent. So just stopping cheaters in general is a very, very difficult process. So I can understand and sympathize at least with the developers in that sense. I can imagine it's a nightmare to deal with when trying to come up with solutions for this stuff.
What are you even saying? The cheaters continue to run rampant in ranked. If you scroll through the top 250 of ranked multiplayer, I think there's like 25 out of the top 250 that are real players, real accounts that aren't cheating. I pray for anybody that makes it up to Crimson, Iridescent, or top 250, because every single kill cam you watch, you think everybody just got a gun pointed at each other, accusing everybody of cheating. The gaming experience, it's fucking chalked.
It's like the Spider-Man meme where they're all pointing at each other.
I mean, you cannot play this game at a high level and have a normal, healthy experience. Yes, dude, I'm a streamer that makes money from the people at home watching me. And I have made a living off of Call of Duty. Man, my career is literally what it is today because of Call of Duty. I love the game. I have a lot of friends that work at Activision. I have a lot of friends that work at Treyarch. And I respect what they do at the company. And they're
Yeah, I mean, you can clearly tell, once again, he's an OG in the scene, and he's even saying it himself. He's very, very passionate about the game. I mean, as am I, and as are a lot of other people who have been playing this game for so long. They just want to see what's best for Call of Duty. So it's one of those things where, we as the community would benefit. And then if we as the community benefit, then Activision would ultimately benefit because people are more likely to, spend money on the game and support the game financially if it's fun, maintainable, has a sense of progression and rewarding aspects to it. So it's just tough because you can tell he's very torn internally, like to his soul, right? Like he doesn't want to trash on the game, but it's something he knows and loves for such a long time. But it's something that needs to be brought up.
the respective company that they work for. The game literally just came out almost 2 months ago, and I don't want to play it anymore because I don't feel like I'm actually using my time productively. I don't feel like I'm actually having a fair gaming experience. I don't want to play the game. And I think that's a huge problem. Team Ricochet, Season 1 Reloaded. Bro, there's...
All right, guys, I think that's going to do it. I mean, I get the gist. It's a multifaceted problem from everything from application code, how the servers are looking, how your local setup is, are there cheaters in the game? Are there not cheaters in the game? Then there's the whole, layer of people complaining about skill-based damage, skill-based matchmaking, all this kind of stuff being thrown in there, which obviously he didn't really address because that's not really what he's focused on. So there's just multiple layers to this kind of stuff, and hopefully Call of Duty is able to get it right because a lot of people do love the franchise and do love the game and hold it very near and dear to their heart. That's it for me, guys. Take it easy.